Welcome in to the very first ever YouTube Hoops Nation podcast. We did a podcast just a couple weeks ago to start off this season. That was on hoopsnations.com. You can go check it out if you want. We made our predictions on the upcoming season. We made our predictions on the upcoming week for basketball. Some award predictions as well. That was a lot of fun. But here, we're leveling it up. It's time for the YouTube edition of the Hoops Nation podcast. Should be a bunch of fun. I'm joined alongside Isiah Curry. Isiah, happy to have you in.
Hey, it's good to be on here. This is a gift of joy, man. Love it.
100%. And let's start it off. This Hoops Nation podcast, this edition, it's titled in relation to the Golden State Warriors because it has to be. What has happened to these Golden State Warriors? They lost opening night by 29 to the San Antonio Spurs. They won a couple games in between. They won 4 games in between. But then they lost again last night. And it wasn't against the San Antonio Spurs. It was not against the Cleveland Cavaliers. It wasn't against the LA Clippers, for that matter. It was against another LA team. It was against the Los Angeles Lakers. And they weren't just beaten. They were whooped. 117-97. Yes, they played the night before. LA didn't, but that shouldn't be happening by any means. Isiah, I'm curious, what are you thinking after that game, after that horrendous game from the Golden State Warriors?
Well, first of all, I can tell you this. Golden State Warriors fans, stop worrying, okay? Because this is one game. You guys are now 4-2, okay? There's a punch, and I mean, you got a whole season ahead of you to really start worrying. Now, I'm going to tell you, the Lakers, they had one of those nights. And I don't want to make excuses for Golden State because they did play the night before against OKC, where a lot of people claimed it's high emotion. It really wore them down. And who knows what they did after the game, you know?
It's true.
You know. So, really, for Golden State, with Curry missing 0 for... How many times is Curry going to go 0 for 10 in an NBA game?
It's
how many
not going to happen too often.
It's not too often. So, most of the time, when stuff like this has happened, more often than not, you're going to get a loss for, Golden State. So, it's just that for fans to really panic about last night's loss, it's a little ridiculous. But I mean, you got to really just shout out and give credit to the Lakers for winning this game. They gave everything. D'Angelo Russell. From Jordan Clarkson to even Nick Young. He didn't shoot too well in the game, but he made some big plays down the stretch. Julius Randle made some outstanding plays down the stretch. And, that just resulted in the win.
Yeah, and a 117-97 win at that. Larry Nance Jr. had an excellent game, including an excellent highlight dunk. That's up on Hoops Nation on the Facebook page for those to see. But that was pretty outstanding, to say the very least. Jordan Clarkson had an excellent game. Nick Young had a pretty good game himself. A lot of people thought before this season that he wasn't going to even be on this Los Angeles Lakers roster. They were going to dish him out, but it seems like he might actually have a spot in the rotation. We'll definitely see how that progresses. The other big game on the night, and we'll see if this ever happens to the Golden State Warriors again, because yes, it was a high-emotion game. It was a national TV game. This Lakers game was 2 back-to-back. LA did not play back-to-back, and they're still figuring out their chemistry. There's a lot of emotion to begin with, just not even looking at that OKC game. So obviously you have to take that into account as well. In LA, that's also an aspect that you have to look at. But a tough loss for the Golden State Warriors despite everything else. And more than anything on that note. Another very, very exciting game, highly anticipated. The return of Derrick Rose to Chicago. Now, let's talk about that game. But before we do, Derrick Rose was booed when he was announced in the New York Knicks starting lineup. Is that the right move for Bulls fans? Were they right on that, or was it just this crazy emotional game once again like the OKC game, and was that just shining through?
Well, if you know me, I'm absolutely high on players making their returns to arenas. And I'll say this, man, it is absolutely disgraceful for Bulls fans, for any Bulls fans to boo a player who gave you so much, and most importantly, he didn't leave. He got traded. Okay, like a lot of these Chicago fans, they just really don't understand how much heart he gave to the city. What his passion was. He wanted to not just win an MVP, but he wanted to win a title with the team. And it's sad for Bulls fans to. I mean, some booed, some yay, but for those who booed, y'all got to rethink and probably watch some more videos and get a little kind of remind yourselves of how much he gave to the organization, because it wasn't his fault that he's gone.
If you're gonna boo someone and you're a Bulls fan, boo the Bulls management. They're the ones responsible for Derrick Rose not being a member of the Chicago Bulls, not Derrick Rose. And Derrick Rose wasn't even angry either. That's the craziest part. So it's just absolutely ridiculous to boo Derrick Rose in his return. He was pumped about his return too. He was happy to be back in Chicago. He said in his first ever New York Knicks press conference that I'm going to remember Chicago. Chicago made me who I was. I am so thankful for what Chicago did. I poured my heart out for Chicago. He was traded to the New York Knicks by Chicago, and he still said that. Okay, and then Bulls fans come out here and they boo him. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's jump into the game, though, because Derrick Rose, he sure made some noise. Now, it wasn't any 40-point performance like some were expecting from Russell Westbrook against the Golden State Warriors, which he didn't do either for that matter. But he did have a good game. Derrick Rose did as well. The New York Knicks defeated the Chicago Bulls 117-104. What's the main takeaway? As the New York Knicks are now 2-3, and the Chicago Bulls are now 3-2.
Okay, I got to give a huge shout out to Kristaps Porzingis, man. I'm starting to like this guy a lot more. 10 for 15 from the floor, 27 points, 4 of 7 from deep, 5 rebounds. That's the only area in his game that he can still improve on. It's just basically his size. That 7'3" frame, I'm telling you, Kristaps Porzingis, he was a big factor in that win last night. Carmelo Anthony added his own 25 points. Courtney Lee hit some shots. He had 17 points. And pretty much the Knicks just came together. Chicago, they had no answer on defense. And it's sad enough that Dwayne Wade, as hot as he's been from three-point line, he hit 5 of 7 shots last night. As hot as he's been from deep, it wasn't enough to beat the Knicks.
It was not. And Kristaps, you mentioned early on in your comments. Kristaps Porzingis, second-year Latvian kid, did not go to college, went straight to the pros, age 17. That's just a year older than me, which is just mind-boggling. He's 7'3" now, without shoes, okay? His wingspan is that of a Giannis Antetokounmpo type. Kristaps Porzingis is really a specimen. But what I look at more than that is, when he played pro ball in Latvia, it's not the National Basketball Association, okay? They don't have the equipment. They don't have the trainers. They don't have the time to actually put into it. They're not getting paid like NBA players at the end of the day, but they don't have the facilities. They don't have the training like these NBA players do. And Kristaps didn't go to college in the States. He didn't go to college anywhere for that matter. So Kristaps Porzingis, until he came over just last year, okay, June 25th, he was drafted by the New York Knicks, he had not had access to a gym, to a weight room, like he now has and like he has had for a full year. This past offseason was his first offseason with all of that, and I think that's going to show. And that's something not too many people are going to look into because it's not the craziest thing in the world, but it's true. It really, really is when you look at a guy like Kristaps Porzingis coming over from Latvia.
Of course. And you say that because he's really up there in this draft when it comes to Karl Towns and Jahlil Okafor. Honestly, I think he's far and away better than Jahlil Okafor in terms of potential and pretty much right now. Jahlil Okafor, he has a little bit of a offensive inside game. If Kristaps can develop that inside presence and continue to develop in the low post, he's going to be a scary, and I mean scary, big man.
Yeah, it's totally true. A couple other games that came across as pretty interesting last night. The Clippers took down the Grizzlies. The Suns took down the Pelicans. Anthony Davis just cannot catch a break. And let's talk about Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has been averaging ridiculous, just beyond absurd numbers thus far this season, but the Pelicans can't seem to catch a break. They can't seem to win a game. They lost 112-111 in overtime. If Anthony Davis continues to put up these sorts of numbers, but the New Orleans Pelicans don't improve, does he deserve the MVP?
This is tough, and it hurts because I am a huge fan of Anthony Davis. He's just someone who I've had so much potential, who I've had so much high hopes for. And to answer your question, no, he does not get the MVP. As a matter of fact, I think the Pelicans should try to trade him for other pieces. And that's if New York just really doesn't find their groove. And I just don't see, or New Orleans, excuse me, they don't find their groove by the All-Star break. They've got to start making some moves. And that they could package with Tyreek Evans, maybe Drew Holiday, even though his wife was dealing with all these problems. Prayers up to his family, by the way. New Orleans has got to figure something out. Even though they just paid the man a mega contract last year, you really have to look at where they're at now. And Alvin Gentry, he really doesn't know where this team's going to go. The front office doesn't know where this team's going to go. They're, 0-6 right now. There's really no question that they're probably not going to make the playoffs this year. And as much success that they had a couple years back in the first round when they were swept against Golden State, they don't even look like they're going to hit that level. So with Tyreek Evans still out, if all these guys come back, basically with Tyreek Evans, with Drew Holiday, imagine their lineup basically. They're not going to be that great, but they'll be okay. But with these injuries, they're not going anywhere. So,
yeah, I mean, with the roster that they have, and that's not even who's on the court, they're not going to make any noise. They're not going to make any noise with this team. They're not going to make any noise with a healthy New Orleans Pelicans roster. And that's just sadly for the New Orleans Pelicans when it comes down to the end of the day. But hypothetically, okay, if the New Orleans Pelicans are a 9 seed and Anthony Davis is putting up these numbers, I say give him the MVP. But the reality is they're not going to be that. So that pretty much concludes that. So no Anthony Davis for MVP is the conclusion between the both of us. Who is your pick for MVP?
My MVP has got to be Kawhi Leonard. And the way he's just continuing to improve his game, you look at his effective field goal percentage, you look at his usage, you look at all of his advanced stats in terms of where he's getting the ball more. There was a rumor that he was working with Kobe Bryant. Hey, from watching him, it looks like he had been because he's taken all these turnaround jumpers. And when he was a rookie, he didn't even consider doing that stuff. He was just a spot-up shooter almost, basically. Staying in the corner and knock them down. But I am very impressed with Kawhi Leonard's game. The Spurs are number 1 in the West right now. And, it's early in the season, but he's been my pick, and I'm enjoying every single game I watch. I got to tune into a Spurs game now just for Kawhi.
He has been pretty incredible thus far. And Pau Gasol, you mentioned Kobe Bryant. Pau Gasol, former teammate of Kobe Bryant, said the other day that Kawhi Leonard is unlike any teammate he's ever had. And that's saying a lot, seeing that Pau Gasol played with Chicago. He played with LA. He played with Memphis way back in the day, like his brother does now. So that's saying a lot. And I will say, Kawhi Leonard gets an award. I just don't think it's MVP. I think it's the Defensive Player of the Year award. Once again, obviously he won back-to-back. I see him three-peating in that category. I do think he's capable, and I think he'll be a candidate for MVP, but I got to give it to my man Russell Westbrook, and I put this past Golden State Warriors game totally aside, which he wasn't terrible in. It wasn't like last night's Stephen Curry in that game. He still had a pretty good game. It's just there were so many just unimaginable emotions going. In addition to the fact that they're playing the most talented team in the NBA, whether their chemistry is on or not. It's the most talented team in the league, and no one's going to deny that. But in regards to Russell Westbrook, Also, I've seen enough consistency from Russell Westbrook putting up these sorts of stats. Guys like Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis, not so much Kawhi Leonard because he's more of a well-rounded player, but guys like Damian Lillard and Anthony Davis, other MVP candidates, we haven't seen them put up these numbers over a long period of time. But when you go back to 2014 for Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant was injured for the majority of that season. Kevin Durant only played 27 games. You know what Russell Westbrook averaged in that season? Almost a triple-double. 28, 8, and 8. And that's while Kevin Durant played in 27 games. The offense was set up for Kevin Durant, and there was no motivation because Kevin Durant had not left yet. Serge Ibaka was also on that team as well. So, at the end of the day, there's so much more consistency, and I know that Russell Westbrook is going to be putting up these stats if he's healthy, if not even greater than what he would have done in the 2014 season if Kevin Durant hadn't played in 27 games, Serge Ibaka hadn't been on that team. So, in my eyes, the consistency and the projected statistics from the OKC Thunder, and from what they've shown me as far as their ability to win thus far, I don't have too much doubt on Russell Westbrook in my eyes.
Yeah, and I agree with you because this MVP race is going to be a lot closer this year, I feel like, than it was last year. Now, we had some guys the other year before last year. It was kind of clumped in. You had James Harden, you had, because the Rockets, believe it or not, I think they were a top 3 team back in the 2014-2015 season. The year after that, the Rockets were just barely made the playoffs. And now with the Rockets this year, they're getting up there offensively. They lost to Dwight Howard, but James Harden, I believe he's going to be back in the conversation, even though he put up dangerous numbers last year. And, with him getting a winning team, it just makes the MVP debate a lot closer than what it was last year. So we have a lot more considerations, especially with DeMar DeRozan as well.
Yeah, definitely something to look into going forwards. Let's talk about some of our disappointments thus far. And we will talk about some of the teams that have impressed us the most, we weren't expecting, some of the main surprises, and we'll go the player out as well. But as far as teams go, let's start to talk about some of the main disappointments thus far. And now, if you had asked me one day ago, I would have said the New York Knicks were a disappointment thus far. But as of course fate had it for the New York Knicks, and I will say I'm a New York Knicks fan, but with that being said, I'm the first to razz them in the world. I know you know that. But I would have said the Knicks were a disappointment. They seem to figure out their chemistry. A team that I will say, though, that hasn't been getting too much attention, that a lot of people had in their playoffs before this season started. The Minnesota Timberwolves are 1-3. They lost against the Grizzlies. They lost against Sacramento. And then they lost against the Denver Nuggets. It's not like they're losing against Cleveland, Golden State, and San Antonio. Or should I say Cleveland, LA, and San Antonio. They're losing against bad teams. That's not a good sign.
And I tell you, with... it kind of made me sick because I saw this coming. I saw the Minnesota Timberwolves. They weren't going to meet expectations early in the season, man. It's going to take time. Tom Thibodeau even said it himself. He feels like they could be a lot tougher than what they are right now. And they're young, and they're really going to take a lot more time. They need a lot more time to really just develop in the season. I say by the All-Star break, they start making that playoff push, and that's what I said before. So that's that.
And then the second team, and they're almost back-to-back. They actually are 13th and 14th in the Western Conference right now. The Pelicans are 16th, but the Dallas Mavericks are 0-5.
And that was my biggest disappointment. But it's not all too disappointing because look at Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes has been pretty solid. He's averaging a good 18 points, 6 rebounds, and shooting 48% from the field and 33% from deep. That's solid. And he's been playing 36 minutes because they needed that lift up at the small forward position. But outside of Harrison Barnes, you got Dirk Nowitzki, who's going to miss a week. I think Devin Harris is injured as well. So there's a little bit of injury concerns here. So Harrison Barnes, outside of him, this Dallas Mavericks team has been my biggest disappointment. so far in the NBA season. I had them making the playoffs comfortably. I had them as a 6 or 7 team. Not sure. It's pretty sad that they haven't even won a game yet they have so much good talent. You got Justin Anderson, you got Dwight Powell, um, Quincy Acey's pretty good, and that rim protector, Andrew Bogut. So there's a lot of key pieces, including Wesley Matthews, including Darren Williams, one of my favorite point guards of all time, including JJ Barea, who is pretty decent, who can have his 20 and 10 assist games if you play him for about 40 minutes. There's a lot to like about this Dallas Mavericks team, and I thought they were going to be really good to open the season. Just hasn't happened.
And in the Eastern Conference, not too many disappointments, really. The Eastern Conference is much, much closer. We have 6 3-2 teams. We have 4 2-3 teams. And, of course, as fate may have it or may not, the 76ers are one of 3 winless teams this year. And I hate to say it. They almost beat OKC on opening night. It just didn't happen. And that's what it comes down to the end of the day. Let's jump over, and I'll let you start this one off. Who have been the most surprisingly impressive teams thus far this season?
I've got to say it. It's the Charlotte Hornets, man. The Charlotte Hornets have played great so far. They're currently, I believe, they're top 2 or 3 right now. The Hornets, they lost quite a bit. Jeremy Lin, Courtney Lee. And now they're getting back Michael Kidd-Gilchrist to start the year. He's looked great. He's averaging just 9 points, but he's also averaging 9 rebounds. Like, he's been your prototypical small forward that you want on a winning team. So adding that Roy Hibbert was probably one of their biggest contributions in the offseason. There has been some solid, and I mean some solid defensive plays from the Charlotte Hornets. So if you look deeper into it, Kemba Walker, he's been leading the way. He's shooting a lot better this year. He's shooting 47% from the field and 42% from deep. He's looked amazing. Nick Batum, I feel like him sliding to the shooting guard position opens him up a lot more because he has a length. He has the size over most shooting guards. I believe he's 6'8". You can check his wingspan. The guy, he's going to give you that all-around presence as a shooting guard. And Marvin Williams, he's had some good moments as well. Cody Zeller, who I believe the Hornets are extending or something like that. Cody Zeller is going to be nice. So the Hornets look good. That's been my most impressive team.
And for me, as much as I hate to say it, the Cleveland Cavs, they're 5-0. They've started this season in incredible fashion. They're the last undefeated team in the entire league. And they're in the Eastern Conference. They've been doing extremely well. They've been beating good teams. They beat the Knicks. They beat the Celtics. They've been beating pretty solid teams. Now, the Celtics, they've been pretty good thus far. I wouldn't say they've surprised me as far as their performance, but they've been pretty good. The Knicks showed some good signs last night as well. But the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm just going to throw this out here. Everyone's been talking about the Golden State Warriors breaking the record. Who's to say these Cleveland Cavaliers win 74 games?
Okay, I'll tell you, Cleveland has looked nice, and Channing Frye, condolences to his family losing his mother. My prayers are up to him. Channing Frye is going to be the biggest part of that because, again, he adds that spacing. Kevin Love, he's looked a lot better. He's kind of struggled here and there, but Tristan Thompson, even though he's got something going on with the Kardashian here, and LeBron isn't too happy about that. Other than that, these Cavs are poised to just do it again this year, and I am absolutely pleased to see that what they had last year, they're building on this year. So that's good to see.
And Tristan Thompson dating Khloe Kardashian, the curse is a real thing. It's not just something wild. What's throughout NBA history, we'll put it that way, really through the last decade. When you date a Kardashian, you stop focusing on basketball And then you stopping to focus on basketball hurts the entire team. And they focus a little bit less on basketball. It's really just a major chain reaction that starts off with the Kardashians pulling them away because there's more money for them elsewhere. And it's just a bad, bad, bad thing for any NBA team, any NBA player. If I'm Tristan Thompson, yes, there are good aspects to it, but get out of there. You can find someone better. Let's continue on in the Cleveland Cavaliers, 5-0. Very, very, very impressive thus far. Let's go to our most impressive players, most surprising players thus far this season, as we have just a couple minutes left on the podcast. This is going to be one of our closing subjects. Isaiah, I'll let you open this one too.
Well, my most impressive player or surprising player right now has been T.J. Warren. T.J. Warren, I have been a big fan of him since NC State, man. He is just an absolute scorer, okay? He is rising as one of the league's top small forwards. And the more Phoenix Suns, you guys talk about Devin Booker, we talk about Bledsoe, we talk about Knight, we talk about Tyson Chandler, but someone who does not get enough credit and hasn't gotten enough credit this season is T.J. Warren. That's my pick.
And I've got to give it to two guys. It's really a tie in my eyes. Harrison Barnes, one of them. Harrison Barnes, my pick for most improved player of the year. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, actually my pick for runner-up most improved player of the year. Both have done an outstanding job. Now, neither of them have really been able to rack in the wins for their team. Milwaukee's 3-2. So Giannis has done a pretty good job in attribution to that. But Harrison Barnes has not been able to do too much for his team in regards to the win column. They're 0-5. But Harrison Barnes getting the opportunities for really the first time in his entire career. And Giannis getting all the opportunities for the first time in his career. Definitely looking forward. Giannis still very, very young. Harrison Barnes still pretty young, but getting the opportunities for the first time. Definitely looking forward to how those guys do. Now, as much as I hate to do it, let's jump to our most disappointing players thus far this season. Isaiah, do you want to start this one off? It's a really, really tough topic. And I hate to razz people so early on in the season, but sometimes we have to point it out.
I don't think I can really give it to one person, but this one is I can't really answer that yet. I like to wait until around Christmas time, but I would sure love to hear yours, man.
Mine, it's a funny one. It's Stephen Curry for the Golden State Warriors. Stephen Curry's the unanimous MVP. People are saying he's the best shooter in NBA history. People are saying he's one of the best team leaders in NBA history. And the Golden State Warriors are losing to the LA Lakers and the San Antonio Spurs by 29 points. I'll give it to Stephen Curry. Now, I would hate to razz someone like Kristaps or someone like Hassan Whiteside, and I'm naming those two guys because they've done an incredible job thus far this season. But I'm okay with razzing a guy like Stephen Curry, the unanimous MVP. He hasn't done a sufficient effort in my eyes. In contrast, and it's not that he's done a bad job, it's that he hasn't lived up to expectations that the media, that every NBA fan has done, and that every media member that voted last year put on him. He's the first unanimous MVP in NBA history, and this is his first season. This is his first couple regular season games after getting that honor. So
let me tell you something, Buster. Let me tell you something. You pick Stephen Curry as your most disappointing player so far. I'm going to pick Klay Thompson because he has not, in shooting 2 for 10 last night, that just puts a big cap on how badly he's shooting the ball to start this year. What was going on all last year when we were talking about Klay Thompson bumping into the league's best shooting guard? And obviously Kevin Durant scoring in isolation situations, basically moving Klay Thompson to the corner, having him just stand around and shoot threes. That's not really his comfort zone. Klay can be an isolation scorer just like Durant. He can score from the post, he can score from mid-range, and he can make layups, and he can take advantage of smaller guards just like Durant. So the way Klay scores, he's not just a stand-up, spot-up shooter, and God forbid that Clay just struggles like this the rest of the season. I hope he breaks out of his shell by right now. It's got to happen.
And I mean, all Golden State Warriors fans are hoping for that as well. All right, with that, let's close this thing off. But first, any closing thoughts on your side? Any teams you're looking forward to seeing this week? Any players you're looking forward to seeing this week? Anything at all?
Well, I'm excited for this Heat and OKC matchup we got coming on here. I don't want Westbrook dropping triple doubles on us. I'm praying for Goran Dragic because he's got himself a tough matchup.
And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what this Knicks team can do going forwards. Was that game against the Bulls an anomaly, or can they actually continue to play that way? I'm looking forward to finding out, and I'm hoping each and every one of you are looking forward to seeing how your team plays this week as well. With that, whether you're watching this on the website, hoopsnations.com, thank you for tuning in. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. Hoops Nation, click the notification button. We upload a couple times every week. Make sure to check it all out. A ton of fun, Isaiah, as always, on edition number 2.
All right, man. It's good. This is something growing. I love it, man. This is something cool, man.
Tons of fun, without a doubt. All right, Isaiah, I will see you next time, and I'll see all the rest of you next time as well. Thanks for tuning in.